Welcome back to the Betsperts Golf DFS Show. I am your host, John Daigle, here excited, ready for WGC match play. Along with me every single week, the sports betting manager here at Betsperts and 4for4 Football, also the host of the Move the Line NFL podcast. It's none other than my friend in life, Ryan Noonan. Noonan, a very big week here.
Big week. Also host of the Betsperts Golf Betting Show.
Too many hosts.
Too many hosts, too many shows, too many things. But we're excited to get started with Jeff Feinberg this week, and Jeff will be on that moving forward every week. And he's very passionate about match play, so that's a fun week to have him on a debut because I know some do not love this format. I do enjoy it. I think it makes for a challenging betting week and a challenging DFS week, but just from the monotony of a classic 156-man tournament, I like how it breaks up a little bit of that flow, and I'm excited to talk DFS strategy with you two gentlemen today.
Feinberg, someone who should not have been available because he's that good, but he decided to open up his schedule, and now we are the beneficiaries of having him on every single week. I'm very excited to listen to his betting show with you. But us two, obviously can't be a trio without a third, and that's why we're bringing on our friend, PGA Splits 101 on Twitter, Ron Klos. Ron, how did your betting card go for the Valspar Championship?
Yeah, position picks did well. Outrights, golf is hard, and so we're grinding away, researching, digging in more. Now this probably not the best week for outrights, so love the head-to-head matchups this week. Just two guys going after each other, so that's what I'm really looking forward to.
We don't have to worry about Rory McIlroy, Cam Smith, Hideki Matsuyama, Harris English out again this week as well. Phil Mickelson just avoiding the public at all costs right now. But we can begin this journey with the scoring format for DFS this week because DraftKings changed it up entirely for this unique event, which actually begins 24 hours from now, Wednesday, tomorrow, with a bracket style of play and ends on Sunday with historically a painfully slow television product that's the equivalent of watching the final participants walk from Hobbiton to Mount Doom for 4 hours. But the DraftKings scoring, I think, is very important to note because there's no birdies, there's no eagles, right? It's 3 points for winning holes since it's match play, minus 0.75 points for every hole lost. And then you get bonuses for holes actually that you're not forced to play if you beat your opponent down that badly. And so with that, I actually want to go into the overview of this bracket and how to build for lineups, because as you can see, Noonan, it is very clearly this week easier to just tank your lineup from the very beginning than it is get some things right.
Yeah, so I think this week is really built for you, John, because I know that you are
love it.
Game theory more so than anything. And this week is, we have a show that we can name 15 shows collectively that are going to be talking about DFS strategy for this week. Yet you will still open it when the cards turn over, and you'll see people that are drawing dead with the majority of their lineup because they are basically putting people in pods, putting people in quads against each other, and you just are automatically shooting yourself in the foot to have any shot of making it through the initial round with 6 of 6. So that is, I guess, just it needs to be said because it is obviously the main very strategy 101 piece for the week. But again, a lot of folks won't do it. So just be methodical in understanding how to do that. We'll obviously talk you through that strategy here. I guess you can make a case that there's some game theory around not doing that. I think that that's fancy lineup syndrome, essentially, where you're really trying to outthink yourself and pivot off of the pivot because not enough people are being smart enough to just do it this way. And then you also have to get them right. So like theoretically, not only do you have to pick guys that line up to make sure that they can get through, but they also have to get through. So that is the main piece of advice this week. Just nail that part and you're already ahead of the game.
To that point, last year's winning lineup on DraftKings, not the million maker, but the equivalent, 150K to first, actually featured 3 of the final 4 golfers and got 6 of 6 into the Elite 8. So just by playing 2 guys from the same group, you may think you're getting cute with game theory, but actually you're just killing your chances. Akin to best ball 12-team drafts. Like if you were structurally sound, you were already halfway there. You just need to put the rest together. Ron, is this an event where you are weighing strokes gained and course fit at this Pete Dye course less since we are more concerned with overall like match play statistics?
Yeah, and just going back really quick to the volatility
Yep.
of this event, like Justin Ray had a great stat. Just talking about the group play, the top seeds advance 30% of the time, and then the lowest seeds in each group advance 24% of the time. So that margin is just so small. And so we talked about this before, golf being so volatile, and then you throw in this match play format, and it's wide open here. So yeah, as far as the stats go, for me, strokes gain approach, and it is hard to model this week. You don't have strokes gain data from this course, so you kind of got to use a little more gut feel. Just looking at guys who won even the past 2 years, Horschel, Kevin Kisner, just kind of guys who could scramble, good putters. And there's other guys who kind of fit that mold that we'll talk about here. But I mean, strokes gain approach, when you think about the greens here, they're smaller than average. Players in the quote section that I put on Betsperts golf.com yesterday talked a whole lot about real tricky pin positions. And so you have to hit your approach shots to the right quadrant of the green, because these greens are very tiered. Players talk about how they slope in different directions. And so guys who, and we talk about this again all the time, approach is another big thing I'm just looking at this week. Scrambling, guys who can grind away and save par. And I know there's no pars really, but if you can half holes, putters, like we talked about, even a Jordan Spieth, guys like that who can, it looks like they're out of a hole, they have no chance, and then they sink a 30-foot putt, and that just kind of demoralizes their opponents. And so you got these great putters who are really ones that I'm going to be targeting also this week.
That right quadrant of the green, also why historically for DFS and at this course, people have favored lefties because of their right to left ball flight, if that's the case. And then also just in this Austin Country Club being 9 miles north of downtown Austin, a city at one point in time, which is beautiful before it became Silicon Valley's little brother. But since it is basically the Longhorns practice facility, that's why guys like Jordan Spieth, Scotty Scheffler runner-up last year, Dylan Fratelli, they were able, perhaps this is what narrative says anyways, to advance to the round of 16 last year with ease, and are typically favored and looked at for DFS at this course. But also, Ron, I know you have, because everyone looks at Ryder Cup data essentially, since that's the sort of matchup play data we have. But I also know that you actually have like historical matchup data to share that can potentially guide our core lineups.
Yeah. So, first of all, Adam Sarson, he's a great follow on Twitter. If you're not following him, he kind of compiled the main parts of it, and then I kind of added to it. And, just looking overall at some of these guys that are historical match play, and also at Austin Country Club in this event, it just kind of gives you an idea of, who plays well. And then I kind of broke it down further to hole differential, kind of plus minus, as far as, Ian Poulter, no surprise, but there's so many times when he, with 4 holes left to play, he's ending matches. And so that whole differential kind of gives you an idea of who can kind of be dominant at these events. And so, guys like Poulter, obviously Paul Casey, a lot of these Euro guys who have played Ryder Cups over the years. Even on the American side, Jordan Spieth has a good record in these types of events. And so, I've got that posted. I posted it on Twitter yesterday, and then on my betting article that was just put on Betsperts Golf. I have that on there for anybody to go look at. Everything's free right now. So, that's a great resource, in my opinion, for just kind of digging a little deeper for this event.
The Poulter first round matchup also interesting because of who he plays. And we're about to find that out because we're about to dive into each quadrant and talk about them specifically. Quickly though, Noonan, before we move on to that, any other final thoughts on overall structure for DFS? Because again, that is most important this week. I would argue more important than strokes gained, any data you can find.
It is. It without a doubt is. I highly recommend people go over to betspertsgolf.com and read Ron's player quotes article, because I think it's really, first of all, it's a great piece of content. It's also really telling because they talk about how, this is kind of a perfect match play course. These guys would probably be pretty frustrated if this was a typical, 4-round cut event because of the, front to back variations, the weather variations based on tee times. There are lots of different things. I believe, I forget who it was, it said you can hit good golf shots and not get rewarded for them here. There's just a lot of extra variance. So we're, again, adding another layer of just variables to this crazy event. And I don't know. So like, I love the historic match play stuff too. And for me, when it fits my narrative of who I really like, I'm going to lean on a positive match play history. And when it doesn't, I'm going to be like, well, it's a pretty small sample and they've only played at this track for 4 years. And that's really small. And like, so you can kind of retrofit it however you want here, because this is the 5th year they played here. So we only really have 4 years of data at this event. Match play as a whole is very descriptive, more so than predictive from my vantage point, because you don't know who they're matched up against in all of those events. The course is very different. Like if we're grabbing match play from Whistling Straits in a Ryder Cup, that's a very different vibe than a Wednesday morning here at Austin Country Club, right? So like, I am fine with having retrofitting it to what, like I said, how it fits my narrative. You can't argue with some of the large historical things like Ian Poulter. Some of the smaller, things where you're getting guys that have only played a handful of, maybe only played very little and have had no success. I don't necessarily weigh that as much. I'd rather play into recent form or how I think this course fits them. So, but I agree with you, Daigle, like theory and lineup construction this week more than anything matters the most.
I think Cantlay is the perfect example of that, because in 3 appearances at this event, he's never made it out of the group stage, but actually he's 7-3-1 in match plays, which doesn't make any sense whatsoever. We should also say, though, that remember, they rejiggered this entire tournament because Jon Rahm was the only top seed to advance last year. So they said, okay, we got this format wrong. And so they made sure there were no top seeds in any quadrant, and actually want to start with Rahm and his side, his upper tier of the bracket here, because that's where we begin. And when you look at this, for those listening on the podcast, Rahm, of course, the number 1 seed. And it is interesting because Bryson DeChambeau, of course, is returning from a wrist injury. Perhaps he's also picking the time where Phil's taking the umbrella of the Saudi, and thus he can sneak back in and play golf just on the PGA Tour recreationally. But overall, Ron, I want to start with this group because John is a favorite of this tournament. And so does it begin with him for you, or where else do you look whenever trying to build among these groups between the top tier?
Yeah, I start, there's a lot of talk in that group. Cameron Young's getting a lot of hype. For me, he just hasn't played this style of golf. I'm sure maybe he did in his junior days and such, but like on this level, you look at Patrick Reed, of course, he has that reputation of this is his type of event. He probably almost died when he couldn't get into the Ryder Cup, the last one. So, he's struggling. Everybody knows about that. So for me, Rahm is pretty much a shoo-in, to get through at least this first group. And I like him. I like him to go pretty far here. We all know about his, quote unquote struggles lately, which, for him really isn't that big of a deal. It's kind of short game stuff that he's still kind of dealing with. But I really like him to go pretty far here. And I don't really see a whole lot in his way as far as even getting to the semis. So definitely playing some Rahm this week.
My lone concern, Noonan, is that the struggles in putting that Rahm has faced, that's arguably like the one thing we need for match play. We need your putting to be strong. Having said that, if you are a part of team #NoPutt, then it doesn't matter, because you would assume that it eventually clicks back to him in his true vintage form eventually.
Yeah, I got the Rahm. I mean, we have enough of a sample of him historically, and to know this small sample of a hiccup per se is going to level itself out. And I would love to be in a spot where I'm struggling and I am the best player in the world over the last 3 months from a strokes gained ball striking standpoint. It's just what a place to be. I know a lot of the struggles have been on and around the green for Rahm, but could not have got a softer opening group here in group 1. So that is a nice path for him. And again, just to start back at the upper level of theory here, hypothetically or theoretically, you need to start and pick one guy out of these 16 to start to move forward, if that makes sense to you, because then you'll end up with basically a final 4 theoretically, and then you need to go back and you need to pick 2 more guys, and they should be from the other section of whoever you picked in that quadrant, if that makes sense. So like if Rahm is your guy here, that's fine. When you go to pick someone else to round out your lineup of 6, it shouldn't be anyone in Rahm's group, and it definitely shouldn't be in anyone in the Koepka group below it, because again, you're just not giving yourself all the outs that you should to get through. Just as far as the Rahm Group goes, I agree. I mean, Patrick Reed just off. Cam Young, again, young guy, but I'm not really worried about experience as much as course fit. I feel like the way that he's playing right now, I kind of want him where he can utilize his length, and I don't think he can really do that here. We have a lot of par fours. We don't see many on tour at all under 400 yards nowadays, and we have a bunch here. So wedge play, guys that can get really good inside 125 yards and in. So that's not necessarily Reed or Young. Sebastian Munoz can run this entire thing or just get absolutely boat raced out. He's just one of the most high volatile players. So Rahm is definitely a safe bet here. Interested to see what the ownership is. We don't have a ton of ownership projections heading into where we're at right now, but Rahm is definitely head and shoulders above these guys.
I also think we have a free square too in DFS we'll talk about as we move along. But for instance, if you want to play like Rahm and Dustin Johnson and just hope you get one of them through because you think this is the toughest group, thus this is the one you want to be more volatile towards. It's also tough because DFS salaries don't allow you to do that. Like they're two of the most expensive players. So although I stress leaving salary on the table because it doesn't matter, right? We're literally just trying to pick winners. So who cares about salary? It's also hard to do because fitting in a viable lineup is really tough this week. I also know, Noonan, you want to talk about Dustin Johnson because you are extremely high on him this week, not just for this group, but for the overall tournament.
Yeah, I don't think that there's a lot of experience in match play or guys that I think fit this course particularly well in his group. And then again, the group below him is probably the weakest or one of the weakest, I think, in the entire field. So I think DJ, I think their reports of his demise are greatly exaggerated. He has been playing some pretty good golf of late. He obviously lit up a Pete Dye track on fourth round at TPC Sawgrass just a little bit ago. And he is actually tops in the field by a pretty substantial margin too in birdie or better percentage from 125 yards and in. And we know we need birdies. We need to give ourselves opportunities to get birdies. And I think this is a really nice spot for DJ. I don't think that I have any fear of Matt Wolff and how he's playing right now. Mackenzie Hughes also very streaky, but not a guy that's playing particularly well. Obviously he can roll it with the best of him if he is in good form, but he's not currently, and Homa is not a guy. I think he's getting a little bit of buzz, but I'm not really concerned with Homa this week. So I like DJ. The group below him is a lot of questions with the two old guys, Bryson, who's just trying to knock the dust off of it, and Taylor Gooch. So I like DJ quite a bit.
Is there anyone in that group below, Ron, between Bryson, Gooch, Lee Westwood, and Richard Bland that scares you or maybe pops as a cheap DFS flyer if you don't have any belief in Dustin Johnson?
So Taylor Gooch, I have my eyes all over him. So 6,200. I mean, we're talking salary savers. His group is definitely, according to the splits or the stats that I ran, by far the easiest group that he's in. Just with so many question marks about Bryson and Westwood and Bland. Two European guys who are kind of more used to this format than Gooch. But I just think what we've seen from Gooch over the last 6 or so months. Just his overall talent. I mean, he doesn't have, maybe off the tee sometimes he gets a little sporadic, but overall, just his talent. I see him coming through that group. And honestly, I see him, at least right now, in my opinion, taking DJ out if DJ makes it that far. So Ooh. I really like Gooch advancing here. And again, even if he only gets through that first group, that salary that you're saving, you're going to be able to spend up on other guys. And so, even if he does only win that first group, it's not a loss.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting because before we move on, in every quadrant, I'm going to make the two of you pick your favorite pick from that quadrant. So, Noonan, let's start with you. Who is your guy coming out of this group of players?
Yeah, I'll go with DJ, and I'll give you the other answer. I guess I'll hedge. If you want Rahm, I think Rahm and Gooch is a really nice pairing because Rahm gets you through the top half of it, and to Ron's point, the savings you get from Gooch I bet to win this quadrant as well. 9th in birdie or better percentage from 125 yards in this event. So I think DJ just is the answer to the question. But if I'm going to be using Rahm, I'm going to be pairing him with Gooch.
What up for you, Ron?
Yeah, I've got Rahm versus Gooch, and I do have Rahm getting through.
I think Shane Lowry, just to note, will also be popular, just given his play at Pete Dye courses, even though his putting has struggled of late. Also 7, 16, and 3 for whatever that's worth in match play. So just be aware of what's happening in DFS with Lowry. Moving on to the next quadrant, though, below Rahm, and the potential player who would play Rahm, DJ, someone else from that group. We have what we're calling the Cantlay quadrant. And starting at the top, Patrick Cantlay, Sung J M, Seamus Power, and Keith Mitchell is a powerhouse, of course, not to mention Billy Horschel at the bottom there, along with Scotty Scheffler, who we talked about early. So, Noonan, let's go ahead and start with you this time. Among all these players, where does it start for you when talking about who we should roster in DFS?
Oh, this is a tough one. There is
This, I believe, is what they're calling the group of death, correct? Or like the quadrant of death.
It is. I think in particular, the top three here are really strong groups. I'm a Daniel Berger guy. I love Berger. I love his mindset. I think he fits his course, his ability to, he's really accurate off the tee. They did a great job breaking it down at Sawgrass, how he can put himself in position and really dictate the ability to get in on approach to these pins to be able to attack. Really good with the wedge in his hands. I like him quite a bit here. I like him he would be my one pick. I think it's actually a pretty tough group, but I think he is a viable winner of this entire event. There's just no weaknesses in his game. He's playing really well right now. He can get really hot with the putter. He's great around the greens. Again, with wedges off the tee, he's accurate. And again, just that bulldog mindset of in match play. I like him quite a bit. So Berger would be my one guy in this group.
Who was the disruptor, Ron, among this entire quadrant? Because as we know, Cantlay, top 3 or 4 odds, depending where you look, to take down the entire tournament. But you do have some significant players to be wary of below him, and Scotty Scheffler and Billy Horschel, defending champion, and Tom Hoge, who fits this course really well, actually. So is there anyone that stands out to you?
Yeah, Hoge for sure. Just the way he's played of late, 6,800. That's a really good price for him. Great value. Just the ability with his irons, talking about earlier, hitting these approach shots. Probably one of the top 5 iron players in the world, especially in that mid to long iron range. And so on these greens where you have to hit your spots, of course, he still has to make the putts, but I just think his ability to put himself in position. And again, he's a Texas guy, went to TCU. So there's a lot of positives, I think, with him coming into the weekend, and just that group that he's in. Billy Horschel, we saw what he did last year, but Peters, Minwoo Lee, they don't really look like threats to me at all. And so Hoge can get past Horschel. You never know what can happen, because look at the Scheffler group above. Who knows who's going to come out of that group. So I think Hoagie's another smart value play.
Given the opening group, as you mentioned, I would argue that Hoge has the most favorable opening round for sure. He's definitely one of my plays the moment I saw the bracket released, put on the radar as, okay, he's already escaped one round. Let's get him past a couple. Is there anyone, Noonan, above him, though, between Scotty Scheffler, Matthew Fitzpatrick, who we were very high on, snuck into a T5 finish this past week at Valspar, Tommy Fleetwood, and Ian Poulter, who we mentioned his match play record? Anyone that scares you if we're looking to roster someone from the below group because of the unknown it has?
Yeah, I think they should all probably scare us a little bit, right? I mean, Scheffler came here, maiden trip to, this event, and, made it to the finals. Again, went to the University of Texas, is very, very comfortable with this course. Again, another highlight to Ron's article on the quotes. He talked about how he felt he has an advantage here because he's just got so many reps, practice reps at this place. So he knows where to miss. He's very, very comfortable here. So that is a really tough draw for him. Again, Ron noted, I think Poulter is something like 47-19, Ron, something absolutely insane. So one thing that Feinberg called out on our betting show today is the other Englishmen in his group are probably less intimidated than you would, get in normal, some of these young Americans or some of these other guys, because they're used to it. They've played with him on Ryder Cup teams and they're familiar with it. So maybe they're a little less intimidated from the historical success that Poulter's had. But again, you can't really argue with it. And I think that really anyone can come out of it. I still would lean Scheffler because not only is his form terrific, but his comfort level here is something I would give a leg up on anyone else in this entire field. That would give me the only pause on Hoagie. Hoagie was the only pre-tournament outrights or pre-release outright bet that I made, and he got a great draw. So yeah, 6,800 here in DFS. I think Hoagie is a great play. But yeah, I'm not betting anyone in that top group, that top tier above them. And I'm even probably leaning light from a DFS standpoint because I really think all 4 guys are viable.
I snuck in a Hoagie outright early on as well. I also have Dustin Johnson outright. Those are my 2 favorite bets right now, although this tournament is an odd one to bet.
Oh, yeah.
Ron, any other closing thoughts on this quadrant? And give me afterwards your pick to come out of it.
Yeah, Cantlay's my guy. He was the only one that I put, I did add Xander later. We'll talk about him. But yeah, Cantlay just, he's kind of his all-around game. He doesn't really have any weaknesses, which is what you need on a course and an event like this. Whether it's putting, whether it's approach play off the tee, he just kind of does it all. And, just people have talked about how his slow play can kind of drive opponents crazy. And he just mentally, maybe the most toughest mental golfer in the field. He kind of just stood out to me right away. He's 7-3-1. Not a lot of sample size, but that's a pretty good start to his career in match play. So, I've got him. I've got Scheffler kind of sneaking through as well. Although, thinking about ownership, do you put Hoagie in there? So that's, something I'll think about. But Cantlay's my guy coming out here for sure.
And Noonan, what about you?
Yeah, Berger for me. I think the Cantlay Berger matchup would be a terrific one to watch because I think they are fairly evenly matched. I mean, obviously Cantlay, what he did at the tail end of last year, Berger has not really had anything that resembles that, but I think just their games are very similar. They're both very balanced players. They are really elite throughout the bag and can get very, very hot. And both have that focused energy that I think you really need to come out of this. So I would love to see Cantlay Berger, but I'm going to go with Berger here.
Is it a situation where you would only roster Berger from this entire quadrant, thinking that if he took down the monster that is Cantlay, he could walk to the Final Four? Or do you have such confidence in someone below him like a Tom Hoagie and that you are looking to perhaps get 2 from this entire quadrant?
Yeah, it might be a spot to get 2, like the savings that you get from Hoagie. You have to see what the ownership looks like. The tough part here is that the Cantlay draw is so soft. So like the Berger play, you really need Berger to knock off Cantlay because I just don't think that any of the Sungjae, Seamus Power, Keith Mitchell trio are going to really contend with Cantlay. I think similar to Xander, as I'm sure we'll get to, have some of the easiest pass as far as an A bucket golfer here. So that would make me a little light on the top half, but yeah, I think you can sprinkle, like I said, anyone from that Scheffler and the Brits group because I would not be surprised if any of them made it through.
Well, we talked about the next quadrant and length already, so let's go ahead and jump over there. At the top, we have headlining Colin Morikawa, the number 2 seed in the tournament, but also a very tough overall region of this bracket, and that Louis Oosthuizen over there, Paul Casey, Corey Connors, Xander Schauffele, who we've already talked about. And let's go ahead and start there because you already mentioned it, Ron. You're high on Schauffele this week.
Yeah, he's another guy, with not having won, a regular tour event, well, here we have another, special type unique event, like the Olympics. And again, he's kind of just been very quiet lately, Valspar, just real solid. I can't remember. I think he was top 10 for sure. So yeah, he has the easiest draw out of anybody on here. And I think just make it to the quarterfinals, he has the second easiest draw to get through. So for me, he was a very easy selection right away. The group above him is just stacked. And, there's a lot of talk about Alex Noren. He's pretty high on my model this week. I think he finished 8th overall, just his overall record. Most people I don't think realize that he's 13-6 career match play, 10-4 here at Austin Country Club. And his whole differential is plus 26 in only 14 matches. I mean, that's unbelievable. So, he's a guy that, he's going to have to get through that loaded group with Oosthuizen and Casey and even Corey Connors. But he's another guy to keep an eye on that gives you some value at only 7.8 on DraftKings. But just going up even higher, I love Garcia and I love Harman. Those are kind of my 2 guys in those top quadrants, maybe kind of flying under the radar, at least maybe Harman a little bit, but I mean, we've seen Harmon the last few weeks. He's just so steady. And, we talked about the lefty angle. He's had some good success here. So, of course, Sergio, plays here all the time. He lives in Austin for some of the year. So just a lot of different narratives with this group here.
Although I'm not dubbing it the group of death, I do think this is the group of volatility, Noonan, and that I could make a case for so many of these guys. Even someone like Webb Simpson, who shockingly competed all the way into Sunday at Valspar, fell apart on the last day, but did end on a high on holes 17 and 18. And then Bubba Watson, I think, is being talked about quite a bit as well, if only because he's 11-7-3 in his 5 trips to Austin Country Club. So overall, where are you thinking about starting and building lineups with this entire quadrant?
Yeah, Ron and I have not talked about it, and I have not read all of his stuff yet because I've been busy doing my own and doing shows, but we are very, very much aligned based off of some of the stuff he just shared here. So I think the Xander is, I think it's just the easiest draw. Finau is spraying it off the tee of late. Irons have been a little bit better last time out, but the rest of the group with, the other guys in there, I'm not super worried about any of them. So I think the path for Xander makes a ton of sense. Yeah, the Noren stuff is wild. I think Justin Ray had a tweet where he mentioned Noren has won or halved 84% of his holes at Austin Country Club. It's the highest rate of anyone that's played at least 60 holes here. That is insane rate. 84% won or halved is nuts. Again, and he is in good form and playing really some of the best golf of his entire career. And it's a really tough group. Connor's only career win in Texas, very comfortable down here at this time of year. Ball striking machine. This is what we need here. Casey is coming off of a really nice showing at Sawgrass. Louis, we know, has been in top form for, a good solid 18 months or so. So that group is really, really tough. So he'll face someone that's a challenge coming out of it. Hopefully they beat up on each other and Finau gets some of those bankable, 4 and 2s and can roll over and save himself some holes into later in the week. But also at the top, Sergio is a very popular play and I think will be popular in DFS. Mm-hmm. Maybe there's some game theory in Morikawa, maybe just because people are going to want to pick either Bobby Mack or Sergio. Again, Bobby Mack shoulder ball here last year, advanced. We haven't seen him a lot stateside this year, but again, fits the lefty narrative. And then that second one below that there, that Abe Answer, Simpson, Harmon, Bubba group is loaded too. But I really like Brian Harmon. I like the way that this course fits him. Nice experience, good recent form. The Webb thing is tough because there's no way that dude wants to play 6 rounds of golf this week. Like, he's just not ready for it. He showed the way he played at the Valspar. He's not ready for it. Again, like if we were in a perfect scenario where we didn't have Webb dealing with this neck stuff, like Webb on a Pete Dye track with that, has, correlation to Harbor Town or Sea Island or all these other places that Webb's played well in his career. I like that. Would like that quite a bit. So you can maybe make a case for Webb to move through it, but maybe get bounced from a Sergio or Morikawa there. But I think Xander just is the one guy I have to pick as my favorite of the group.
What I think makes Xander so interesting, Ron, is that Noren, I believe, I could be wrong here, I think Noren's going to be top 2 and not 2 highest roster golfers. I think he's popping in models across companies, across sites. I think he's gaining a lot of steam. People are even so much accepting that maybe they just roster him as a $7,800 free square on DraftKings, and just even if he doesn't advance beyond the 16, just take it because the salary's so good for his upside. So how would you play it knowing that everyone is focused around Noren and DFS?
Yeah, see, that's the tricky part for me because I have Casey and Oosthuizen ranked so high still. And so, I'll play him some. And just by the way, I think this is a great week, for obviously with the volatility, maybe limiting your bankroll a little bit, but single entry, 3 maxes, even 20 maxes. Me personally, I'm tightening my player pool, kind of like we talked about with all these rules in place where you don't want to overextend yourself and you don't want guys overlapping. So it makes it hard to play a lot of guys. And so if I'm tightening my player pool, I may have a little bit of him, but the chances of him getting out of there with, like we said, Casey and Louis, it's a tough call. So, it'd be interesting to see what ownership actually is. But I'm not going to go too far with Noren this week, even though I love him, even though the numbers say he's a great play. it's just a tough call.
Noonan, I'm going to put the spotlight on you to start this quadrant, this impossible one to pick from. But go ahead and give me your favorite golfer to escape what is this? When you look at brackets, the Northeast region.
It's got to be Xander. Just because he is the best chance to get out of his group, and that in itself is half the battle. So give me Xander here. Again, Tournament of Champions, the Olympics, different, alt events where we don't have a cut, and it's not the typical battle. It just fits the Xander model historically. And again, no weaknesses in the back. He really can do it all. And we want those guys to be able to manage around this golf course the weather can pick up and give you different looks. It can present challenges to hit these greens. You got to run hot with the putter. Xander just doesn't have any flaws.
And Ron, what about you?
Yeah, and it's crazy we haven't even said a word about Morikawa.
I know.
I think we saw last tournament, his short game was struggling a little bit there, and I don't know if that's good coming in here, especially with Sergio lurking. But yeah, I've got Brian Harman and Schauffele kind of advancing to that quarterfinal, and definitely have Xander coming through there. But I think Harman's a real dark horse here.
Do you think it's a situation where people forego Morikawa given his recent play, and thus they try to get cheaper in DFS around Sergio, like you said, is going to be quite popular. Webb Simpson, maybe. Brian Harman is absolutely going to be popular, and Bubba Watson. So would it be like intelligently contrarian to roster Morikawa, who we think is still the best player among this group, and then just hope he escapes it?
Yeah, definitely. I think it would be. I think a lot of people are going to play into the fact that so many lower seeds kind of advance and win here. And so I think Morikawa is going to be that guy who a lot of people are just going to leave out just to try to play that, take those lower seeds. Definitely if you want to get interesting with your builds and Morikawa, we all know how good he can be, especially on approach and ball striking. So definitely if you want to get contrarian, he might just be a great play.
This one's also the most fun in my opinion because let's go to the Rahm quadrant, playing Dustin Johnson and Rahm, playing one naturally leads to you fading the other because you're not paying for both. Whereas this one, you can make a case arguably to play 5 different guys. And so if you're playing 3 to 20 lineups, this is the one I feel like I would jostle the most in between and just hope to get the escapee correct. But moving on to the final one now, because there are some powerhouses here, and Viktor Hovland, let's just say his group. Hovland, Will Zalatoris, another favorite, Cameron Tringale, and then Sepp Straka, who's getting a lot of notice for his recent play, but also just bodes really well at this course. We already mentioned some former Longhorns as well in Jordan Spieth, Adam Scott, Justin Rose, Keegan Bradley in this group, and then right above them, Justin Thomas, Kevin Kisner as well, who's been immaculate in match play. So, Ron, you drew the short straw in this one. Where does the conversation begin for you? I didn't even say Russell Henley, by the way, who's also getting a lot of steam right now. Where does it begin with you among all of these players?
Yeah, so, you can't really argue with JT right now, how he's been playing. I think he's kind of naturally the first guy most people are going to look at, and I wouldn't blame them. I've kind of got my eyes on Spieth, and again, I know he's not going to really rate high in models because his approach and all that other stuff just has kind of been on and off recently. But going with the Texas narrative, he's 9-5-3 career here at Austin Country Club, and so just a guy who's just so good at sinking putts when he needs to around the green. He's kind of someone that I've got going to the quarterfinals. And still deciding on whether he gets further or not. Looking at the lower half, I know Henley's being talked about, but I really like Joaquin Niemann here. If you look at his around the green play, which kind of was his main weakness of his career, his last 7 events, he's been positive and really see a nice improvement there in his kind of scrambling abilities. And so he's kind of my guy that I've targeted on that bottom half, even just coming out, going past Zalatoris even. I like Zalatoris over Hovland. So just a lot of volatility down here as well. But I like Spieth and Niemann the most.
How do you start separating this, Noonan, especially knowing, like I said, Sepp Straka is absolutely going to be high rostered. I know he's a favorite outright pick as well for a lot of people, given his recent play. And just the fact that the group underneath him, you could argue, is fairly soft, even though everyone's gravitating towards Henley.
Yeah, this is probably the group that I have the most difficult time with, or I just don't, the least conviction. I don't have that one guy that is a really clear favorite for me. The top group, I mean, it's going to be exciting to watch Hovland and Zalatoris go head to head. Just, probably one of the best pairings of the week to watch. I would definitely feel stronger about one of those two, especially if Sepp Straka is going to start to catch some ownership and steam here. So feel much better about pivoting to Zalatoris or Hovland. Zalatoris, again, like team no putt here. He's got to hopefully just absolutely drill him right into the pin where he can pick him up. I'm probably making Zalatoris putt everything out if I'm in his group this week. No freebies, but inside the rubber only for Zalatoris, or inside the leather, depending on your grip these days, I guess. But make Will putt everything out. But the Henley stuff makes a lot of sense. He always is very model friendly because he is so good tee to green. Just not a lot of guys around there, like Kevin Na coming off of some missed events because of the baby. Niemann has been probably one of maybe the under the radar one or group A guys here so far this week. Matt McNeely might be kind of tricky. I mean, we like McNeely on short courses, right? I mean, I know the California golf typically, but plays really well at those smaller courses so far in his career, early career. So not a massive sample. So those guys you can make a case for any of those guys. JT probably playing as well as anyone in the world. Hasn't really sealed the deal on a Sunday yet, but again, like how he played on Sunday at the Valspar was nice. We know how he finished up over at Sawgrass. I would like to fade Kisner. Those are just, the Kisner and Horschel guys are not guys that I want to back this week, especially into any ownership. The Spieth Adam Scott thing is something I'm going to be mixing in, because I really could see whoever makes it out of that group going into really maybe the final four here. Adam Scott is another guy similar to what Ron's pointing out with Niemann and his struggles around the green. Scott was a guy that just couldn't putt for years. And now you look over the last 3 months, he's like number 2 in the field in strokes gained putting. He's been really dialed in pretty good form, tee to green as well. So I would love to just, from a golf fan standpoint, watch Justin and Jordan play, on Saturday. But I think we're going to have some Adam Scott here mixed in for me as well.
If you play Justin Thomas, you already said, Ron, that you have him advancing to the quarterfinals. What does that do for you in perhaps playing another golfer from the top and hoping you get the right one escaping from this group? Or do you have such confidence in Thomas, especially given how soft pretty much his group is, that he is definitely going to be the one to advance among these 4 total groups? Because even someone, like I said, like Henley will be highly rostered. And then Maverick McNeely is going to get interesting. I'm going to guess he gets steamed by Wednesday morning, because in taking over for Sam Burns, the DraftKings algorithm obviously didn't catch up. Salaries were already set. So 6,200 is practically a free square if you want to jam in some players. And that means even playing him if you roster Justin Thomas.
Yeah, so I did like Thomas initially, but I actually do have Spieth beating him. So
okay, interesting.
And that kind of goes to what you said. You can't. If I'm playing Rahm, if I'm playing Schauffele, if I'm going to try to maybe mix Cantlay in there, I just can't go Thomas here as well. So yeah, I have Spieth I have Spieth going all the way to the kind of the final 4 here. So that's my selection. And at 8.9, I think that's a decent price for him. Just kind of with being the whole Texas narrative and all that stuff. So, Niemann, it's a tough call, like Ryan said, down there with Niemann and Henley. And,
honestly, if you like Niemann, and for those listening, like the fact you're touting him, this is good, because in liking Niemann from not only this group, but the group above him just to come out, I think you're naturally contrarian, because I don't think Niemann's being talked about at all. So if you like Niemann, stick to your guns and play him, because that is naturally going to give you a contrarian lineup.
Yep, for sure. Totally agree.
And that's probably how to just approach this entire region, at least for me, this is probably the most, not that we wouldn't want it everywhere, but like ownership driven, because I don't feel really convicted anywhere. I mean, obviously just on paper, JT, right? But I've already I've planted flags on DJ and Xander, and I feel like I can't have DJ, Xander, and JT, right? So especially playing single entry or 3 max, you're just not gonna be able to fit all of them. So you have to make some stands. So getting contrarian with whether it's Zalatoris or Neiman or kind of however those things, start to work themselves out. I like Russell Henley, but if I'm playing Russell Henley into ownership, I like that quite a bit less. So I really need to get a better feel for that as we get closer to that first tee time.
And at home, remember, if everyone's paying up for 2 golfers, they are likely playing Maverick McNealy to get there. So just remember that when trying to differentiate if you are playing 2 expensive golfers or multiple expensive golfers and trying to jam players in as well. Ron, let's go ahead and get your pick among this quadrant.
Yeah, so I've got Spieth and Neiman, and then Spieth going to that Final Four.
And Noonan?
I'll go Zalatoris and Adam Scott with Adam Scott moving on.
Interesting. And before we close out, I also want to get your final 2, Ron. Who do you think will be playing from each side of the bracket?
I've got my 2 outrights, Cantlay going against Schauffele, and I've got Cantlay winning.
Noonan?
Berger and Schauffele with Schauffele taking it home.
I have Dustin Johnson, and I'm unclear right now, and I have Dustin Johnson winning. So those are my picks. We are not closing just yet, though. We actually want to finish because Ron, in particular, has some Corrales Championship thoughts, because as we've been scrambling behind the scenes, Noonan, hosting other shows, getting things ready on the football site, it's Ron who's been doing the deep diving and actually has not only data for us and some outright picks for the Corrales Championship, which starts on Thursday, correct? We're getting a normal tournament for once.
Correct.
Not only that, but if you're watching, remember, interactive show. Every Tuesday, 3 p.m. Eastern, we do this. We have the link out there on betspertsgolf.com. We have our model right now up on the site. And so for those looking, you can see that Nate Lashley is at the top. But Ron, I'd rather get your outright picks. And perhaps they do correlate since you help out with this model. You help out Sam Hoppen with this model.
And just one more last thought on the match play. So a little more pro Gooch stuff here. So Bryson in a press conference was just asked if he was, as far as how fully recovered he was. And his exact quote was, "Am I going fully at it? No, not even close.
No.
I won't be able to go at it until Augusta." So again, that just kind of solidifies Taylor Gooch for me.
It's always
Daigle is totally playing Bryson now. He's got Bryson at no ownership. Like Daigle is just salivating to jam in Bryson this week.
Why does it always have to be something? Like
it's always something.
You have to admit he is the most polarizing golfer going right now. For better or worse, the most polarizing for sure. Go ahead though, Ron. Corrales Championship.
All right, so I'm just kind of starting the digging here, and so there'll be a lot more posted on Betsperts Golf and obviously on my Twitter coming up here. But so Corrales, just really quick, we have an island coastal course in the Dominican Republic. It's a smaller field, only 120 golfers, and I think at this moment they're scrambling to try to fill it. It's a par 72 course, one of the second longest annual course on tour behind Torrey Pines. It's 7,670 yards. A Tom Fazio design. It plays a half shot under par over the past 5 events. So it's not really a birdie fest, and a lot of that has to do with the wind. So that's kind of a big thing to look at here is looking at players who have had past success in windy conditions. And I'll be building a model here tonight, and I will kind of have that included in there as far as which players succeed in the wind as far as in the past. You have very easy to hit fairways. 72% is the driving accuracy percentage. The hugest greens on tour, 9,000 square feet. And you have paspalum everywhere. And so it's kind of that really soft, sticky grass. Approach shots. This is definitely a second shot course. These greens hold really well on approaches. So you're going to have guys who can obviously get proximity to the hole. Kind of important here as well related to that. And just as far as a few guys I like, definitely a tournament, in my opinion, where you kind of want to shoot for that middle range. We've seen a lot of golfers here kind of in that 40-1, kind of up to 80-1, have a lot of success. And so I've got guys like Grayson Sigg, Bryce Garnett's been playing really well late, Thomas Dietrich, all these guys are 40-1. Dietrich just super talented, played a lot on the DP World Tour. Even going down the board, guys like Kramer Hickok, Patrick Rogers, each of these guys are kind of pretty decent mid-value ranges on DraftKings. And then finally, kind of the value range. Hudson Swafford finished 6th last year and then 1st. He won the year before. He's only 7.6 K on DraftKings, which is an amazing value. We saw Tyler Duncan kind of pop at the Valspar. He's only 7.5. Haotong Lee, another guy who had his struggles for a long time, but a world-class golfer. He's at 7.7K. So looking at Sam's model, even Roger Sloan, who kind of pops up there at second, he's only 6'8" on DraftKings. And so, there's a lot of edges to be had if you're willing to kind of put the time in, do a little bit of research. And again, I will try to provide a bunch of that tonight going into tomorrow morning, just some different things to look at for the Corrales.
It's also worth stopping by Betspertsgolf.com, not only just in general, but because that slate on Thursday is a featured one as well. Like DraftKings did put up the prize pool money for it. So if you can manage to turn around research, which you can with Betspertsgolf.com, then by all means, jump in the lobby. Noonan, do you have any like outside thoughts that you've done some research on for the Corrales Championship?
I know the Nasty Nate Lashley at the top of the board is definitely an interesting look here. Good friend Evan Silva knows that you spend a lot of time researching golf every week. And for some reason, a couple of years ago, I was driving around and caught some local Chicago radio talking about the Detroit event. And I think he probably heard all of like 10 seconds of it. And they were simply saying that Nate Lashley won the event the year before. And then without talking to me about it, fired off an uncomfortable wager at Nate Lashley to go back-to-back at Detroit. And our buddy here at 4for4, Connor Allen, tailed the play. And I was just more mad at my friends for not actually asking me any advice. So now Nate Lashley has been a running joke for a couple of years now. So they're very excited to see Lashley popping in the Corrales model. Interested to see Sahith Theegala, who as a kid, I just want to continue to bet on. So I would have liked to have seen him at longer odds. But I'll make a lineup. I'll make a couple of bets solely off of the stuff that Ron puts out on the site. Ron is such a stud, guys. Like Ron's content, you should be absolutely soaking in. The guy is a grinder. So don't let this opportunity to get his stuff for free go to waste. And then you'll get a taste of it and you'll want to make sure you have it every week. So I will completely blindly tail Ron here on Corrales since we're flying blind as far as a lot of strokes gain data and stuff like that goes here historically.
To that point, it is actually quite literally the last week you can get the best deal we're going to offer probably all year, to be honest. And signing up for a 4for4 betting subscription, getting your $100 Fanatics gift card, and then getting Betsperts Golf sub for free. Literally, it's closing on Monday. You're listening to this on Tuesday. You have 6 more nights to get in. So do that as soon as you can. Also, looking this up right now, speaking of running jokes, Richard Bland, you can get in some markets plus 145, 2 plus 170, depending what book you bet at, and first round matchups over Bryson. So if Bryson truly is not ready to go, that's something we should probably be looking at. May even make our best bets article that will be up Tuesday afternoon at betspertsgolf.com. So until then, Ron, what else do you have to plug before we get out of here?
Just Corrales coming out. Check betspertsgolf.com. And we got match play starting tomorrow. Looking forward to it. Should be a great week. And also make sure you're checking out every day, checking out to the Discord in the morning, because Ron's stuff goes up overnight, typically by morning at the latest. And he's betting on showdown rounds as well. It's all there. Leaders, finalists, shooting outrights in. It's literally all there. Make sure you're tagging along. And again, for free this week. So until then, good luck this week. We will see you next time.